So let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 1 is titled Making of Plans. But when we read this, we don't really get so much the making of plans. We seem to get the step before you would actually make plans. What we're dealing with here is weighing advantages and disadvantages. So it's not really so much about strategy at this point as we are sort of trying to take stock of our current supplies and from that to forecast our victory or defeat. But let's go ahead and start in. So the first thing we have here is Master Sun says, and that sort of cues you in that he is not writing this himself. Most likely this is, our commentator here says, perhaps this was written by disciples. When I'm writing a letter to someone, I don't say, well, Brandon says this. You just sort of tell them what you want to say. And so this is, I had mentioned the idea of a redactor or editor, so this is one piece of evidence that we probably have some kind of an editor at work in this text. So Master Sun says, war is a grave affair of the state. So a grave affair of state, or a serious matter of the state, it's sometimes translated. So let's think for just 1 second about what that means. So war is identified with the state. There's a little quotation from the poet Edward Young here on page 101 of the Penguin edition of this text. This is from his poem Love of Fame, and he writes, "One to destroy is murder by the law, and gibbets keep the lifted hand in awe. To murder thousands takes a specious name, war's glorious art, and gives immortal fame." So perhaps he's saying this tongue-in-cheek, but the idea is if you kill one person, it's called murder. If you are licensed by the state to kill thousands or millions, then it can be considered war. And this is the same sort of thing that's going on in the art of war. War has to do with the state. It comes from a top-down sort of process, and this is very much where Sun Tzu is trying to ally himself. Next, Sun Tzu says that it is a place of life and death, a road to survival and extinction, a matter to be pondered carefully. So he has a few different metaphors going on here. He's describing war as a place, and as a road, and as a matter. It's a destination and a path, requiring a journey he wants to say that we should not take too lightly. Next, Sun Tzu writes, "There are 5 fundamentals for this deliberation, for the making of comparisons, and the assessing of conditions: the way, heaven, earth, command, discipline." Now you'll notice here that the first thing that Sun Tzu is going to talk about is deliberation, or strategy, taking account. What can we expect to be the most likely outcome given what we know? What factors can contribute to this outcome? Next, Sun Tzu writes, "There are 5 fundamentals for this deliberation, for the making of comparisons, and the assessing of conditions: the way, heaven, earth, command, discipline." Now you'll notice here that the first thing that Sun Tzu is going to talk about is deliberation, or strategy, taking account. What can we expect to be the most likely outcome given what we know? What factors can contribute to this outcome? The most mysterious of these 5 fundamentals is the way, or as it is in Chinese, Tao. Tao is a very confusing and a very rich concept within Chinese philosophy. I want to read a couple of explanations of what it is. The first comes from Thomas Cleary in his book, The Essential Tao. He writes, "Tao is one of the most basic and comprehensive symbols in the Chinese language, the center of all philosophical and spiritual discourse. It may mean a path, a way, a principle, a method, a doctrine, a system of order, and it also may mean the matrix, structure, and reality of the universe itself. Every art and science is called a Tao, or a way. But the source of everything, the fountain of all art and science, is called the Tao, or the way." In his introduction to our translation of The Art of War, our translator, Minford, he writes that the Tao could be considered a knack or a skill. These are all sort of based within one way of thinking about Tao, but there's not really much reason to think that Sun Tzu is going to use Tao in the same sense that it's being used by other philosophical texts or other thinkers. He is known for commandeering and taking what he wants, and it's questionable whether he's taking this idea of Tao and sort of using it for his own uses. So I want to bracket for a question the idea of what Tao is, and just sort of give ourselves a little bit of agnosticism in this realm and say, we don't quite know. And what I want to do is just challenge you for a second to sort of put your finger over the word Tao and tell me what you think this would mean. So if we see, as it comes a little bit later in our next section here, the way causes men to be of one mind with their rulers, to live or die with them and never to waver. So just ask yourself, and maybe you can take a pen and paper and write down what does that? What is this thing that causes men to be of one mind with their rulers, to live or to die with them? So I can give a couple of ideas. Maybe it's trust, it could be love, it could be devotion, it could be a sort of a blind faith, it could be a deep sort of belief that your leader is doing the right thing. It could be an idea that things will always work out for your country. So whatever this little bracketed subject is, it could be a lot of things. And we're going to continue to think about this as we go through the text here, but I don't want us to get settled into one understanding of Tao just yet. The term Tao has its roots in the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu, and I wanted to read the first chapter, the first little verse for you. This is from Stephen Mitchell's translation, just to give you one idea of how this could be understood, or not understood. So this begins, "The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding." After the Tao, the second fundamental is heaven. Sun Tzu writes, "Heaven is yin and yang, hot and cold, the cycle of the seasons." It'll be clear in a moment that at least one thing that Sun Tzu means by heaven is the climate, rain, snow, and things like that. And we'll need to see in a minute what he means by yin and yang. How the climate can affect war. We can draw from one famous example in the War of 1812, when Napoleon was hoping to attack Russia and overtake Moscow, but was not planning on a Russian winter. So he goes there and has to brave the winter, gets to Moscow and finds that it has been abandoned. There's no food, there are no horses. And then this city is set fire to. It was made all of wood, and it was burned to the ground. So left with no supplies, Napoleon decides to take his troops back to France, and there has to trudge through the winter. Here you see a painting of Napoleon's retreat from Moscow. This is by Adolf Northern, and it's not, as you see, a pretty sight. I'll let you have a few moments with that.